there's like 1,000 dissertations written trying to answer that question, but to try to sum it up as easily and as possible for the everyday reader or viewer, the main idea behind the system is this idea that translates as experiencing. It's the moment where the kind of character's consciousness and the actor's consciousness meet. So the actor is not fully becoming the character. That would be literal madness. But the actor is instead kind of living as the character, feeling what they're feeling, thinking what they're feeling, or feeling what they're feeling, thinking what they're thinking. And in the back of their head, though, they're still kind of controlling it, right? Because you got to say your lines, you got to do your blocking, you got to not kill the other people on stage. And so that's what Stanislavski was trying to figure out. How could an actor give an inspired performance and experience on demand? Because other art forms, painters, writers, what have you, they have the luxury of just sitting around and waiting. The inspiration comes or it doesn't. Actors don't have that luxury. They have to be in character, fully inspired at 8:35 when they enter the play for the first time, PM, 6 nights a week. So how do you do that? And so he really spent the rest of his life trying to find answers to that question. He started asking it in 1906, and he really spent the next 32 years trying to solve it. Some key aspects of that are that the actor's material is themselves. A painter has paint, a writer has words, sculptor has clay, actors have themselves, their experiences, their bodies, their voices, their ideas, who they are. And then the other was to try to break down both the creative process and the role itself into its component parts. And so he started coming up with a lot of ideas that are still hugely influential today. One of them is the way he approached text, that you break down a script into beats, that the characters always have to be wanting something, and the things that they want or need to do, what he called, the Russian word translates as task problem, then motivates action, the things that they do throughout the play. Another has to do with the given circumstances of the play. The given circumstances is a phrase that means kind of all the contextual information that you need as a character, right? What era of history is it? Where are you? Who are you? What's your life story? What's going on in this scene before you enter it? What will be going on after you exit it? All that contextual information actually gives you a guide for playing the part. So those are really, really important. And then the one that kind of becomes maybe the most famous over here in the United States is this thing called affective memory. And affective memory is the use of your own past experiences and the emotions associated with those experiences to help you feel the emotional reality of the character. I mean, Stanislavski didn't call it that. He called it the system. He spelled it in lowercase letters and he put quotation marks around it because his idea was it's this always evolving thing. He first puts the major components of the system, and I've only talked about a few of them. There's a few more, but he puts the major components of the system by the end of that decade. So by 1910, he's really starting to put it all together. Short version, he then starts this breakaway organization called the First Studio to teach the system to younger actors in their early 20s who have been apprentices at the Moscow Art Theater. That proves hugely successful. One of those actors, Richard Boleslavsky, flees Russia after the communists take over because he had been an officer in World War I, and he was concerned about getting executed, basically. And so he fled Moscow with his wife, Natasha, and a couple of other actors, and they slipped over into Poland, and then he and Natasha eventually made their way to the United States. In the 1920s, Richard Boleslavsky founds a school in New York called the American Laboratory Theater, dedicated to teaching Stanislavski's ideas and realizing them in production. Several of his students are, some of the most famous people who come out of that are Harold Clurman, Stella Adler, and Lee Strasberg. Lee Strasberg then, after the American Lab Theater goes belly up, takes some of those ideas and some other ones and adapts them together. And his adaptation of it is what becomes known over here as the method. You don't want to just talk about this stuff as, theory that exists in cloud cuckoo land, right? You want to bring it down to earth and be like, here is this thing I am talking about. And not only can you see it, but we also have this information from how the film was made, and so I know that this is actually what's going on here. If you wanted to just rent a movie right now and see it in action, you would watch A Streetcar Named Desire and just look at what Brando is doing on screen, because he just seems more alive and more present and wilder and more spontaneous and challenging and all sorts of things than the other actors of his time period. Marlon Brando really establishes a beachhead for the method in Hollywood